Hi, everybody, and welcome to our CHY 114 lab. Believe it or not, this is actually how I taught lab during the year that was the height of the pandemic. Was that year 2021, I guess it was. Very happy to be back in the labs at this point for the last year and this year. But we obviously had to miss our Monday lab due to the Labor Day holiday. And so I did the same thing last year and it was fairly effective. Just recorded a video with everything that I would have talked about regarding course policies and things like that, things that you would be missing. And one thing that the pandemic did bring us is recorded videos of lab procedures and things like that. And I'll talk about that a little bit, but that's what you'll be using to make up for the lab that we did miss yesterday due to the holiday. And so let's start out just by looking at a few of our materials and things a little bit. So again, CHY 114, this is your lab to accompany CHY 113, which I believe most of you are in this semester with me. Either, you're in CHY 113 with me this semester, sorry. And so the course website, we have a general course website for all sections of CHY 114, easy enough to find, and I included the link. And I'm just making a note to myself to actually be sure that I do so. But I will include the link to the website in the email that I send you about this video and so forth. And so the website is just like 113. Website's really sort of our central hub for the course. All relevant course information can be found here. Things like the lab schedule and what labs we'll be doing and what material is due every week. And we'll also see another place where this can be found. But for instance, you see that when you come in on Monday the 12th, your Module 0 notebook pages and post-lab material are due, as well as your pre-lab materials for Module 1. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. But that's information that you can find right on the course schedule. A number of other things on here, which we will talk about some as we go through this video. Things like the individual instructor pages, we'll touch on that a little bit later. Let's spend just a few minutes talking about the course itself, and we'll look at the syllabus a little. Just pop that out, bring that up a little bit larger. And so actually, let me just peek at something real quick. So that's the general syllabus for the course. Here we go. Let me pull up my syllabus, about the same, but I do have my relevant contact information in here. And so, again, my contact info, my office hour availability. I am available for office hours if you want to meet with me. Wednesdays 10 to 1 via Zoom, which you can schedule right on the link here, also on my website. And Thursdays from 12:30 to 2, I'll be available right in my office. Things that you will need for the course, you will absolutely need to have some sort of safety glasses or goggles. That's non-negotiable. You will have to use them. You'll have to have them. You'll have to wear them. They can either be, let's see what I've got in my office here. They can either be the larger goggles, such as these. Some goggles, something like that, or simpler safety glasses. Either way, as long as we do have a couple versions on the on eCampus that you can purchase. You can buy those. You can go on Amazon, Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever. As long as and I'm looking for the rating now. I can't find it on here, but there's a certain safety rating. I mean, as long as they are listed as safety goggles, safety glasses, you'll be fine. But those will be absolutely required. You will need to have a copy of the lab manual. Sure, I get current editions. This is an old one right here. Oh, okay. Lab manual looks like this. And so you'll have to purchase that through eCampus as well. Hopefully you have done so already because they can take a few days to arrive. If you have not, do that immediately so that you can get your lab manual as soon as possible. It does need to be the newest edition, it needs to be the 4th edition of the manual. We have made some changes, and so the old editions of the manual will not suffice. You need a calculator, obviously, spreadsheet software. We will be doing a lot of work with various spreadsheets and graphing. The preference would be to use Microsoft Excel. Google Sheets will work as well. And for the most part, it's got all the functionality that you would need. I'm just personally not as familiar with Google Sheets, so I wouldn't be able to help you quite as much with that. But Google Sheets should work for most everything that we do. There is a link right on the website, by the way. So you do have, if you didn't know this, you've got access to a completely free version of all of the Microsoft Office software. And so Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, whatever the N one is. I don't remember what that one is, but the entire Microsoft Office suite you do have available through your university account. Be aware that if you do get your Excel through there, there are 2 versions that are available on that site. Download it to your computer or use a web-based version of Excel. Be sure to download it to your computer. The web-based version does not have all the functionality that you will need. You won't be able to do everything that you need to do if you use the web-based version. And so be sure to just download that to your computer, download Excel, and you'll be fine. You'll need access to a printer. There are several printers available on campus, available on all campuses, a couple on the Gorham campus, several here on the Portland campus. If you do need to, if you don't have access to a printer at home, several different ones available to you. You will be printing out spreadsheets and graphs and turning those in, so you will absolutely need to be able to print. Don't have to be in color. Black and white is absolutely fine, but you will need to print out spreadsheets and graphs. I will not accept them emailed to me. Professor Staples, I forgot to attach my spreadsheets. I forgot to print them out before class. Can I email them to you? The answer is no. I just don't want to be having to track down different emails as I'm grading things. I want them all right there at my fingertips available to grade. What else from the syllabus do we need to talk about? So sort of the structure and format of the lab. Every lab period will begin with a pre-lab discussion talk in which I'll talk about some of the relevant chemical principles associated with the lab, talk about some of the various analyses that you're going to perform, and any procedural considerations. For a lot of you, this is the first time you've set foot into a lab like this. And so I'll be talking about how to actually take some of the measurements, how to work with some of the software that we're going to use, how to use some of the glassware and so forth, and really looking at the tools that we're going to use. Grading, pretty basic. I mean, you've got what we call sort of your weekly work, which will consist of any of your pre-lab work, and we'll talk more about some of this in a little bit. Any of your pre-lab work, your lab notebook, your post-lab work, and a conclusion. That weekly work accounts for 80% of your grade. You will also have a lab practical at the end in which you are going to come in individually. So during the semester, when you're working on the various modules in lab, you will be working in groups. But for this lab practical, I want to ensure that you have actually gained some lab skills. And so you will be coming in individually for the lab practical to perform a couple of the procedures that we've done. We'll talk more about that as the semester goes on, but just know that you will be doing that individually, which means you have to make sure that you are an active participant in your lab group throughout the semester. Make sure that you're actually doing things. And as long as you're doing that, you'll be fine for the lab practical. There will also be a final paper. It'll be definitely a paper for my class, and we'll talk more about that as the semester goes on as well. That is also worth 10% of your grade. Oh, all this weekly work and these things, I'll talk more about these a little bit as we talk sort of about the weekly flow. Get a copy of the schedule and the syllabus, same one that's available on the website. Let's chat about lab safety a little bit. As I mentioned, you need to have your goggles or your glasses. Once chemistry starts happening in the room, lab goggles have to go on. And they will remain on for the duration of your time in the lab. Even if you are done your lab work and you're staying with your partners to work on some of your calculations and so forth, which I encourage. I think that's great when people do that. You still have your glasses on. If there is still chemistry happening in the room, your goggles will be on. You're going to hate them. The goggles are going to leave lines around your eyes. They're going to fog up. You're going to complain. I don't care. I want you to be safe. And that's the bottom line. I know that they're a drag. If you need to pop out into the hallway for a minute, take your glasses off, wipe them down, let your face breathe a little bit. I get that. I'm going to do that from time to time. You'll see me doing that. But we have to make sure that our eyes are protected. And so when there's signs happening in the room, clothes will be on. Or sorry, clothes will definitely be on at all times. Your goggles will be on. Which brings us to proper attire, clothing. No shorts, no skirts, anything like that. I mean, wear pants, wear comfortable but not real loose shirts and so forth. Long pants and appropriate shoes are usually the biggest ones. And so again, absolutely no shorts, no sandals, flip-flops, and so forth. There must be closed-toed shoes. I will send you away if you are not wearing proper lab attire. You cannot stay if you are not wearing the right clothing. That's a guideline for the USM labs. It's an OSHA guideline. I mean, it's guidelines right up through the whole system. So absolutely must wear proper lab attire when you're in the lab. In general, keep the labs neat and tidy. I mean, that just makes sense. You'll see when you get into lab that at each of the stations there is a drawer where you will be getting your glassware and so forth. When you are done with the lab for the day, clean all the glassware and make sure to place it on the appropriate drying rack. All of the drawers are lettered. You'll see drying racks in the back of the room. So just make sure to put your equipment on the appropriate drying rack by letter. And then when you come into lab, when you're starting to work, if you realize that you're missing one of your graduated cylinders or something like that, for instance, it's probably on the drying rack from the previous group. So some of your equipment may be there still drying. When you do come to lab, I will have you sign a safety contract stating that you will be following these various safety rules and so forth. And so, yeah, just make sure that you are clear on all the different rules on the front page of the website. Also, be sure to watch this lab safety video. It goes through a lot of some of the other safety features and safety things to be aware of. So make sure that you watch that as well. Let's see, what else on the syllabus? Attendance and so forth. You got to be in lab. If you know ahead of time that you have to miss a lab for some sort of extenuating circumstance, it might, and I stress might, be possible for you to attend another instructor's session. What you would do is go onto the website and look at the instructor schedule. And we see here a schedule of all the different 114 labs this semester, day and time, and the instructor with an email link. So you would be able to shoot that instructor an email. So again, if you have some sort of extenuating circumstance, athletic event, something like that, contact me ahead of time and let me know. And then it would be your responsibility to contact one of these other instructors for a time that worked for you to see if they have room and would let you attend their session. Many of our labs are full, and so it might not be possible for you to attend another section. I know, for instance, that I think all of my labs right now are completely full. Dr. Hausman's lab, I mean, several of these labs are full. But if there is room and the professor is willing, you may be able to get into another section. Again, if you know ahead of time, and it would be up to you to make those arrangements. If you do completely miss a lab meeting, you can get the data and you're not able to make it up with another instructor, you can get the data from another student and then still complete all of your pre and post lab materials for a maximum of 75% of the total points. If you do completely miss, like utterly miss more than 2 lab meetings, you can't pass the course. And so keep that in mind. You've got to be here in order to attend the lab. Not only that, but so lab, typically, I mean, labs are scheduled for, 2 hours and 45 minutes or so. Depending on what lab we're doing, the first half hour to hour is going to be pre-lab talk. If you're not there for the pre-lab, you can't be there for the lab. And so if your lab starts at 9:30, don't expect that you can show up at 10 and say, oh, I've only missed a half hour. I'm fine. Probably not. In fact, I set that personally at if you are more than 15 minutes late, you cannot stay for the lab. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. The late work policy, you can turn in labs and turn in any material 1 week after it is due for a 25% reduction. I will not accept them more than 1 week late. And so you do have 1 week grace period or 1 week late period for 25% penalty, and I don't take them more than a week late. That is all for syllabus information. Assessment, safety, attendance. With attendance, obviously, we as well, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. And so don't worry, I will be taking that into consideration. If you have COVID, obviously you're not going to be here and we will work something out. Even if you wake up some morning and you just feel sick and miserable, haven't had a chance to take a test yet, I mean, definitely stay home if you're sick and we will work things out. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. We are very strict with our attendance policies, but that being said, understanding of the current situation and the fact that people do just get sick. And so let me know if that comes up and we'll work it out. Schedule. Okay. Let's sort of talk about what the weekly flow, so to speak, looks like for lab. And so, okay. So when you come in every week, you're going to have 2 main packets that are due. You're going to have all of your post-lab materials from the previous week. And so and we'll talk about all of these a little bit more as we go, but your notebook, so your lab notebook that you took during lab itself, all of your post-lab analysis with your graphs, spreadsheets, and so forth, and your typed conclusion. So all of that material from the previous week will be due when you come in, as well as the pre-lab material for the week, for the current week. And so for instance, we peeked at this a little bit already, but that means that when you come in on September 12th, we're going to be doing module 1. We will have done module 0. You're going to do it by watching a video. We'll talk about that. But you will have done module 0. So all of your module 0 notebook and your post-lab, there's no conclusion for module 0. But your notebook and your post-lab for module 0 will be due next week on Monday, as well as all of your pre-lab material from module 1. Another thing that we are fairly strict about is if you don't have your pre-lab material done, you cannot stay for the lab. And so let's talk about those. Let's talk about your pre-lab work. Your pre-lab work, let me pull up an electronic version of the manual here. And so let's look at your pre-lab work for, so let's skip ahead, for instance, to module 2. We'll just as an example. So let's go to module 2 here. Module 1, module 2. Okay. Sorry. There it is, module 2, pre-lab materials. Okay. And so you've got a couple different things for most labs as far as your pre-lab materials. You'll have pre-lab exercises. Pre-lab exercises are questions that are designed to get you thinking about some things involved in the lab, get you looking at some of the principles that we're going to be studying, get you thinking about the Green River, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. And in some cases, doing some calculations for things that you will need to be doing during the lab. And so you've got pre-lab exercises, and you'll see that those are noted by pre-lab exercises up in the header. You also have the pre-lab notebook template. In a pre-lab notebook template, that's where you're sort of setting the stage for what you're going to be doing during the lab. And so your pre-lab notebook template, you're going to have a title in there. This is all in your lab manual. You do not need a separate lab notebook for this course. It's all included right in your manual itself. But you'll have something for a title for the experiment. Now, a title isn't just experiment 1. A title might be investigating conductivity on the Green River. That's a descriptive title telling you what you're doing. Objective. What are we trying to do? What's the scientific objective? The objective of this lab is to determine the conductivity at 5 different sample spots along the river. List of your materials and so forth. What things are you going to need for the lab? List of chemicals. What chemicals are you going to be using? And some information regarding those chemicals. Now, all of this information you can find on safety data sheets, and we do have all of those safety data sheets available to you right on the website as well. So we go to the website here, safety data sheets. We can see here, for instance, module 2, and they're all labeled. And so module 2, one of the chemicals you'll be using is ammonium nitrate. And so all the information that you will need about that chemical here, various things like the hazard statements, signal words, some of the physical properties of it. And so that's one of the reasons why it's important to have this pre-lab information all done, or this pre-lab work done before you come to class, is you're familiar with some of the chemicals we'll be using, and you know the hazards associated with those. Any example calculations right out here, and then this procedure overview. This procedure overview is going to be quick bullet points of what you will be doing. They don't need to be in a lot of detail, but something to the effect of make this much of this concentration solution. Standardize the conductivity probe, measure the conductivity of all these solutions. Just real quick bullets that show me that you've looked through the procedure and you have a basic idea of what's going to be done during the lab. The goal here, and we're not going to do this to you, you're all just beginning in lab, but one of the goals is that you ideally should be able to take this pre-lab notebook template and just take that into lab and nothing else, and be able to do your lab. In fact, Dr. Woodruff, who teaches our biochemistry courses here, that's what he does with his biochem lab students. They have their actual lab notebooks at that point, not just the sort of notebook built into the manual, but they've got an actual lab notebook. And he doesn't let them bring their procedural information into the lab with them. They have to do everything based on what they've written and prepared in their own lab notebook. So again, we're certainly not looking for that level, but just keep that in the back of your head. That's the sort of thing that you're eventually hoping to build towards. And so that would be all the pre-lab work. And so that's what would be due for as you come in for the lab we are doing that day. So then you come in. You come in and you perform the lab. You're working on the lab. You've got your lab notebook. And again, that's built right into your lab manual. We have 2 different columns, procedure and data and observations. This is where you're writing down everything that you do as you do it, as you're actually performing the lab. Let's take a look, actually, instead of this one, we'll take a look at an example that we have here in the manual. Here it is. So here's an example that would be, for instance, from module 3. So here's just sort of explaining what you want to be doing, what you want to be writing down. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here. And so this here in the italics, this is what you would want to be writing in your manual. Test tubes were labeled, blah, 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 blah. 5 milliliters of deionized water was added to this. 4 drops of coloring reagent were added. The spectrophotometer was calibrated according to the instructions. Absorbance of each was measured, and blah, blah, blah. And so this is an accurate account, an accurate description of everything that was actually done during the lab. Full sentences, proper grammar, so forth, and then all of the data and observations on the other side. Note that there are some visual observations here as well. Even though we took actual data, we also wrote down what we saw. After sitting for a few minutes, the color was pink in every test tube except for the blank. In the standards, the 2 ppm was the lightest and others were darker, and so forth. So some visual observations there. Somebody should be able to take your lab notebook and repeat the experiment. You should be able to hand your lab notebook after an experiment to another 114 student, another CHY 114 student, and they should be able to complete the lab based on what you've written there. And so that's the level of detail that you're looking for. So you don't need to put things like obtained graduated cylinder from the drawer, washed the graduated cylinder. Things like that don't need to be there. But you should have enough detail that another 114 student would be able to complete the lab. And so then you've done the lab. And so at that point, what you're going to be doing is uh, all the post lab material. And so for the post labs, you're going to have various questions. Let's actually pull up. Let's go to the module 1 post lab. Why not? Okay, module 1 in lab notes. And you won't necessarily use all. I think we provide you with like 4 or 5 pages of space for your notebook. You're not going to use all of that. And in other cases, you'll see that tables are given as well within your notebook or your post lab. In most cases, you don't have to actually use those tables, like it says here. You don't have to actually fill out the tables in your manual, but they're provided to help show you how you might set things up in Excel. And so you would go through, and so it discusses here what different Excel spreadsheets you're going to want to use, or what analysis you're going to do. So you're going to run some analysis on this in Excel. Then it talks about some of the graphing that you're going to do. So you're going to generate a couple of different graphs. Printout of the graph should be turned in with your post lab packet, and then some various post lab questions. And so that's our basic flow. You're going to come into lab with all of your pre-lab materials for the lab that we're doing that day, and then your notebook, your post lab, and your conclusion will be due the following week. And so every week you'll be coming in with pre-lab materials for what we're doing that day, and your post-lab materials for what we did the previous week. Your conclusion, by the way, your conclusions, you typically half page to a page or so, talking about the science of what we did. I'm not looking for a rehashing of the procedure. I'm looking for the big bullet points of what you found. What were you looking for? What were you investigating? What did you find? And then finally, what does that mean? And so that would be turned in with your post lab material as well. Okay. And so I realize that some of that can get to be quite a bit to keep track of. And so there's a couple ways that you can know what you have to turn in. One of those is, again, by looking at your lab schedule. And so you're going to have, so on the lab schedule, we know, for instance, for September 12th, again, we've looked at this a little bit already. The other thing that you will see is if you go into the various instructor pages on the website. So here's my page within the 114 website. One thing that I have in there is this For Next Time tab. And if you pull this up, it will tell you what is due on what day. And so on September 12th, the week of September 12th, here's your Module 0 pre-lab, or your Module 0 post-lab work that needs to be turned in, as well as your Module 1 pre-lab work that needs to be turned in. And there'll be a little bit here in the beginning that will always stay there about the order to turn things in. When you're turning things in, it will always be in 2 separate packets. You're going to have your pre-lab materials in one packet and your post-lab materials in another, so 2 separate packets. And please turn them in these orders. It just makes my life so much easier when I'm grading if everything is always in the same order. So please be sure to do that. And you'll see as the semester gets going that on this For Next Time page, I give a few more details typically compared to the schedule here. I'll give a few more details on this page of some various things that you're working on and turning in. The other thing that you will find on my page of the website, so we will be using class data for everything that we do, and for most, I shouldn't say everything, for most, maybe not even most, about half maybe of the modules, we will be using class data. And I will always post that right here on the website. And so those of you that are in the Monday 9:30 section, you would click there. And all of the class data will appear right here as we get rolling. I'll talk a little bit more about that when we're there live, so that'll make things a little bit easier. Also, the other thing that you will see on these individual class pages, any emails that I send out, you will have copies of down here in the announcements. That might be about it as far as the sort of this course intro and just about the lab itself. I believe I will probably just make another quick video talking about what we will be doing for the lab with the Green River project, as well as module 0. You know what? Nah, change my mind. Let's just do it all right now. Keep it the same video. Why not? And so your entire semester is built around what we call the Green River project. Let's see if I can pull up. Actually, it's on the front right here. You can sort of see it right here. And so this is the Green River. Oh, that's going to bug me. I know I've got a better picture of it. Let's see if I can pull that better picture up. All right, sorry for the little glitch in the video, but I paused you for a second so that I could actually get my larger map. And so this is the Green River. The issue with the Green River is that a few years ago, everything seemed fine. The people were there and life was abundant and everything seemed nice and healthy. In the last few years, though, we've had a housing development go in here at Site A, and there's also been a textile mill started operation here at Site B. And what has happened is that now down here at Site C, downstream, it's been found that there is a lot of algae growth and a lot of fish kill being found. And so our job this semester is to figure out why, figure out what is impacting the river to cause this to happen. And so we have 5 different sampling spots, one completely upstream of everything, one that is right at Site A, a sampling spot between sites A and B, one right at Site B, and finally sample spot 5 at our site of concern, Site C. And so we're going to run through 5 different modules. The EPA has actually asked us about this, asked us to figure out what's going on. And so we're going to go through 5 different modules, and examine 5 different water quality parameters to try to see what's happening. I really like this lab in general. I like teaching this lab. I like this application of it. We will still be tying this in with some of the principles that you will be learning in CHY 113, but not as tightly as maybe a traditional college chemistry lab would. Sort of the more traditional college chem lab is you learn about something maybe like precipitation reactions in lecture, and you run a few precipitation lectures in lab and do some measurements on those. Nothing wrong with that approach. It can be an effective approach if done right. But with this approach, you're actually seeing what some of the stuff can be used for. You're seeing chemistry in action. Spoiler alert, this is not a real river. It is a fictional river, but this is sort of the sort of real thing that might happen. For those of you who have lived in Maine for a while, or if folks are from Maine, ask them about what the Androscoggin River used to look like in the 60s and 70s. It was awful. I mean, you would not want to swim in it. You would not want to touch it. Certainly wouldn't want to drink it. It was a dirty, disgusting river because of things like this, and that they were just being dumped in. And a lot of measures were put into place, but a lot of these types of things had to be done to figure out exactly what was going on there. And so this is the sort of work that really is done. And so we're going to run through and look at these different water quality parameters and try to figure out for ourselves what's happening with the Green River. I mentioned your final paper. The whole point of your final paper is your response to the EPA. You telling them this is what we actually found. And those are done individually. Like I said, we'll talk more about them as time goes on. But that's the whole idea of this Green River project, is to try to figure out what is going on in the river, try to figure out what is happening. And so really the last thing to talk about today is that I will be sending out another video that goes over module 0. The whole idea of module 0 is, and you unfortunately have to do it by video, but the whole idea of module 0 is to get you playing with some of the equipment that we're going to be using, to get you finding the mass of some things, finding the volume of some things, and really just familiarizing yourself with the lab setting and the equipment. And so I try to do that as best I can. The video you're going to watch is actually the one that I recorded during the pandemic. And so I tried to do that as much as I could in that video to really sort of familiarize you with the equipment and so forth. And so what you will be doing is watching that video and recording in your notebook as if you were the ones actually doing it, and then completing all the post lab work based on that information. The data will be posted, it'll all be right on the website. And so again, 114 website, go to my page, go to each individual, and there will be a link right here. This course intro video is what I'm recording right now. And so I'll have the link to that up in just a second. But then the procedural videos and the data will bring you to this page. You've got to jump around a little bit, but then there we go. We'll eventually bring you to here. And so you'll have 5 different short procedural videos, and then the actual data will be given to you in an Excel file. And so that's how you'll do module 0. And so remember then, when you come on Monday, September 12th, you'll need to have all of your module 0 notebook and post lab. Even though you weren't here for the lab, I do expect you to have these things turned in based on watching these videos. And so you will have all of that material turned in, and you should absolutely have your module 1 pre-lab work turned in. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. But hopefully this has shown you basically how things are going to work this semester and what the different policies are. Any questions? Let me know. Thanks, and I look forward to actually seeing all of you in class on Monday the 12th. See you then.